allow me to pose a question, one that whispers through the millennia, a question infused with the damp scent of ancient earth and resin. What if the darkest corners of our world hold not just old stones and ancient trees, but restless secrets that breathe in the very atmosphere, vibrating with every rustle of leaves? What if the forests we see on maps are, in fact, living, breathing entities whose hearts beat to the rhythm of long-forgotten rituals and unspeakable horrors? Welcome to a world where the veil between our time and an unimaginable past thins to transparency, where every shadow might conceal something more than just an absence of light. Today, we dare to step into the depths of the Black Forest, Germany's Schwarzwald, a place as beautiful as it is sinister, where tales are whispered of witches' Sabbaths, of ancient beasts that roam the twilight paths, and of veiled horrors that history was too terrified to record. Prepare yourselves, for each subsequent story will draw you deeper into the heart of darkness, where the line between reality and nightmare vanishes, leaving only the shifting echo of the unseen. Imagine the Black Forest, the Schwarzwald, not merely as a geographical region in southern Germany, but as a colossal, ancient entity whose roots plunge deep into the Earth's core and whose crowns scrape against low, heavy clouds. This is a place where time flows differently, where every bend in the path, every fallen log, and every stream cascading down granite slopes holds the echoes of a past saturated with pagan rites, desperate pleas, and screams that once tore through the night. The air here is heavy and moist, imbued with the scent of pine needles, damp earth, and something else, something intangible yet palpable, as if electrified by anticipation or a silent presence. As soon as the sun dips below the horizon, the forest transforms. Familiar tree silhouettes contort into distorted figures. The rustling of wind through branches becomes an ominous whisper, and a distant howl, which might have been merely a wild animal, takes on a chilling intonation, making the blood run cold in your veins. It is in such places, on the most hidden clearings and abandoned peaks, where people feared to tread after dusk, that, according to ancient beliefs, the darkest rituals were performed, summoning forces that have slumbered since the dawn of time. The dance of shadows on the peaks, secret Sabbaths and ancient oaths, deep within the heart of the Black Forest, among ancient fir trees whose needles seem like blades in the moonlight, there exist places spoken of only in whispers, especially when Walpurgis Night or Samhain approaches, when the veil between worlds thins to a thread. One such place is, according to legend, the invisible to the uninitiated, yet palpable to those who seek it, Widow's Mountain, or Hochwegspitz, as is sometimes called in old lore. A peak hidden from travelers' eyes by a mist that never entirely dissipates. Here, where the air grows thin and cold, and the stones seem to be living echoes of ancient curses, witches and sorcerers of the Schwarzwald were said to gather. These were not mere bedtime stories. Villagers from nearby settlements have for centuries passed down gruesome tales of strange glows emanating from the peak on certain nights, of wild cries and inhuman laughter piercing the very fabric of the night, causing even the bravest hunters to tremble. It was said that at these Sabbaths, encircled by ancient runic stones rumoured to have been erected by the Celts, witches danced around a blazing bonfire, their shadows, grotesquely stretching and twisting, merging with the shadows of ancient trees, becoming a single, terrifying entity. They swore oaths to unseen entities, sought power over the elements, and cursed their enemies, and sometimes entire generations. Imagine a cold mountain wind chilling you to the bone, infused with the scent of smoke, sulfur, and something sickly sweet and putrid, impossible to identify. The rhythmic, monotonous beat of drums made of dried hide, echoing off the stone walls, penetrating the very depths of your soul. And a chorus of voices merging into an inhuman chant, rising to the black sky like a summons to something ancient and alien. Some tell of accidental travellers who, having wandered too close to Widow's Mountain on such a night, witnessed horrific visions. Phantom animals with glowing eyes running in circles, or human figures dancing in ecstasy, their faces contorted by grimaces not of this world. Once, legend has it, a young woodcutter named Gunther, lost in the fog, stumbled upon one such Sabbath. His account, which he could only recount months later when his sanity returned, was full of fragments of gruesome images. Women with hair braided into branches, whispering incantations in a language that was not human, and men with eyes glowing red, tearing apart captured forest creatures and offering them as sacrifices. He spoke of a hunger emanating from them, a primal, insatiable craving that made him flee blindly until he collapsed at the foot of the mountain, where he was found the next morning, pale, trembling, and forever marked by what he had seen. These legends, like deep scars on the body of the forest, recall a time when the boundary between the human and the mystical was not just thin, but barely discernible, and anyone who dared to cross it risked losing not only their life, but also their soul. If these tales of secret gatherings, shrouded in mist, send a shiver down your spine, then what would you say about those who walk among us, their true nature hidden beneath a thin veil of human guise, those who shed their skin in the moonlight to embrace an older, wilder form? Roaring shadows, legends of wild men and werewolves of the Black Forest, the Schwarzwald, with its impenetrable thickets and secluded valleys, has always been fertile ground for legends of beings that stand on the threshold between the human world and the animal realm, between reason and primal instinct. Among the most frightening and enduring stories are those of the wild man, or wilder man, who is not merely a savage from the forest, but something far more sinister, and of the werewolf. These creatures were not just fabrications to frighten children. They were a very real terror for the villagers living on the forest's edges, their shadows creeping at the periphery of consciousness for anyone who dared to venture too deep into the woods. The wild man, according to tradition, was a primeval forest spirit, or perhaps a cursed human outcast whose soul had merged with the wild. He was described as a creature of immense strength, covered in fur or moss, with eyes that burned with a wild, inhuman fire. His appearance heralded misfortune, ruined harvests, livestock diseases, or the disappearance of travellers, especially children who wandered too far into the forest chasing berries or mushrooms. Imagine the scene. Late evening, fog creeps along the ground, and suddenly, from the deepest part of the forest, comes not so much a howl as a low, guttural growl that vibrates the very earth beneath your feet and tightens every nerve in your body. This growl is unlike that of a wolf or a bear. It carries a hint of human malice, distorted and amplified by a savage essence. But even more horrifying were the accounts of werewolves. Unlike the wild man, who was always wild, the werewolf was an ordinary person by day, your neighbor, the carpenter, the shepherd. But by night, especially during the full moon, they would transform into a ferocious wolf or wolf-like creature, driven by an insatiable thirst for blood. These stories were particularly terrifying because the enemy wasn't out there in the thicket. They could be hiding among your own. They tell of a village nestled at the foot of the Schwarzwald, where one night a series of brutal attacks on livestock and people led to madness and paranoia. Bodies were torn apart with inhuman strength. Paw prints on the damp earth were enormous and unnatural, and the air was thick with the scent of blood and wild beast. Fear paralyzed the village. No one could sleep soundly. Every rustle outside the window, every distant howl made hearts pound like crazy. Finally, an old herbalist, whose eyes had seen much, pointed to one of the residents, to the blacksmith Hans, a man known for his taciturn nature and strange, wandering gaze, especially when the moon was full. No one wanted to believe her, until one night, during another attack, a group of brave men tracked the beast to Hans's very doorstep. They saw something that forever marked their souls, a massive wolf whose eyes glowed in the darkness with a frightening, almost human intelligence, disappearing into the shadows, and the next day Hans was found in his bed, pale, exhausted, with blood under his fingernails and deep scratches on his body that he couldn't explain. Such stories not only evoked terror, but also sowed seeds of distrust within communities, making people look at their neighbors with suspicion. For who knew whose soul harbored a wild beast, ready to break free under the cover of night? Do you feel a cold breeze tracing your neck, like unseen fur, and a distant howl penetrating your consciousness, making you wonder what or who might be beyond the next forest clearing? If the living horrors of the forest make your heart clench, then what would you say about those that inhabit walls, which have themselves become tombs for forgotten tragedies? The Black Forest is dotted with ancient castles and ruins, whose stones remember the blood and vows that were given and broken, places where time itself seems to have frozen in an eternal echo of past suffering. Ghostly echoes of abandoned strongholds, castles breathing, grief. Among the dense forests and deep gorges of the Schwarzwald rise the ruins of ancient castles, their grey, moss-covered stones like dragons' teeth piercing the skies. These once majestic fortresses, now crumbled and abandoned, have become a refuge not only for owls and bats, but, by the deep conviction of the locals, for restless souls who cannot find peace. Take, for example, the ruins of Hohenbaden Castle, which proudly looms over Baden-Baden. Its history spans centuries, and every stone seems imbued with the pain, intrigues, and tragedies that unfolded within its walls. Once a mighty centre for the Margraves of Baden, after a fire in 1599 and gradual decay, it became a place steeped in ominous legends. It is said that the ghost of a princess still roams its ruined halls and staircases to this day. According to one version, she was imprisoned in the dungeon by her own father for a liaison with a commoner and died of longing and starvation. According to another, she was poisoned by jealous relatives. Imagine, late evening, as fog rises from the valley, enveloping the ruins like a shroud. A cold wind howls through empty window frames, creating an eerie melody akin to weeping. You step on ancient stones, feeling their age-old chill beneath your feet, and suddenly you hear a distant, barely perceptible whisper that sounds like your name being called from nowhere. And then, as if by intuition, you feel the touch of icy air, not explained by a draft, as if an unseen hand has brushed your skin, and you feel you catch the scent of old roses and decay, an aroma that, according to legend, accompanies the appearance of the restless princess. But Hohenbaden is just one example. Deep within the forest lie other, less famous, but no less ominous ruins, such as the remains of Waldeck Castle, where, according to tradition, the moans of prisoners tortured in his dungeons can still be heard to this day, and on certain nights, when the moon is blood red, one can see the phantom. Figures of knights clad in rusty armour, patrolling their former domain. These knights, according to local tales, were betrayed and killed during a siege, and their souls cannot find peace until their honour is restored, or their long-forgotten treasures are found and given to their rightful heirs. The atmosphere of these places is such that even the most sceptical visitors involuntarily begin to feel an inexplicable unease, a chill down their spine, a sense of being watched by unseen eyes from beneath crumbling arches and ruined towers. These castles are not just piles of stones. They are monuments to human passions, madness, and cruelty, places where the past is so tightly intertwined with the present that the boundary between them has become indiscernible. Perhaps you, yourself, wandering through such places, have felt this inexplicable pull, this whisper from antiquity, trying to convey long-forgotten stories to us, stories that are not mere fiction, but echoes of real tragedies that continue to unfold in an eternal dance of shadows. As darkness descends upon the Black Forest, not only do the shadows of castles awaken, but the very air fills with unseen entities, which might be spirits or something far more ancient and malevolent, awaiting unwary travellers. Enticing whispers, wandering lights, and the shadow of the night raven. As dusk deepens and the last rays of the sun pierce through the dense fir canopy, vanishing into the inky depths of the forest, the Black Forest begins to breathe with different, more sinister lungs. It is at this time that entities appear, embodying the very essence of fear of the unknown and of being lost. The Irrlichter, or wandering lights, and the Nachtkrab, the night raven, a harbinger or even an embodiment of death itself. Irrlichter are not merely a natural phenomenon, though some attempt to explain them as marsh gas. In German folklore, they are the souls of unbaptized children, wandering through swamps and bogs, seeking their way to heaven, yet condemned to lure the living to their doom. Or, even more terrifyingly, they are the spirits of suicides or those who were murdered in the forest and whose souls cannot find rest. Imagine, the night is deep and moonless, the air cold and damp, permeated with the smell of decay and stagnant water. You are lost, the path has vanished beneath your feet, and around you is only deep, impenetrable darkness, broken only by the silhouettes of distorted trees. And suddenly, in the distance, through the thick fog, you see a faint, flickering light, like a lantern or a window. Hope fills your heart. You walk towards it, but the light seems to tease you, receding as you approach, leading you deeper and deeper into treacherous lowlands, where the ground beneath your feet becomes viscous and deceptive. A voice in your head whispers, "Follow the light, it will show you the way." But the closer you get, the clearer it becomes that this light offers no salvation, only leads to inevitable doom, to the embrace of cold, black quicksand from which there is no escape. Many travellers who dared to venture into the wildest and most uncharted parts of the Black Forest vanished without a trace, and their stories, passed down from generation to generation, always ended the same way. They saw the light, followed it, and dissolved into the night, leaving behind only the echo of their desperate cries. But if the Irrlichter play with the mind, luring travellers into nature's traps, the night raven, Nachtkrab, is a creature aimed at innocence and life. Legend has it that it is a monstrous, gigantic bird, the size of a young bull, whose feathers are as black as the abyss itself, and whose eyes burn red like embers in hellfire. The night raven is not just a predator. It embodies the terror of parental loss, symbolizing a wicked force that snatches sleeping children from their cradles. It leaves no trace, only a feeling of piercing cold in the room, and an inexplicable emptiness where a child lay moments ago. Its wings, when it flies over rooftops, make no sound, only a sense of oppressive weight and crushing darkness. It is said that the night raven feeds not only on flesh, but on children's dreams, their hopes, and their future, leaving parents in eternal grief and despair. In old villages, mothers still whisper ancient incantations over cradles and hang amulets of dried rowan berries in windows to ward off the ominous creature. They tell a story of a family from a small village living on the very edge of the forest. One night, the mother woke up to an unbearable feeling of cold and silence. Her infant, who had been sleeping in a cradle next to the bed, was gone. The window was wide open, though they remembered closing it. On the windowsill remained only 3 deep scratches, like the claws of a huge bird, and not a single cry, not a single sound that could have warned of the tragedy. This story, like many others, serves as a grim reminder that even within the safest walls, one is not protected from the forces that dwell in the darkness of the Black Forest, forces that can take what is most precious, leaving behind only the cold echo of despair. But if we speak of the forces that lurk in the Schwarzwald, we cannot forget the most ancient of them, those that predated the appearance of man, the spirits of the earth itself, remembered only by the stones and trees that have stood witness to countless centuries. Ancient guardians of the depths, forgotten deities and cursed lands, beneath the shadow of the Schwarzwald, deep under its evergreen carpets, and through the roots of ancient trees, lies an invisible network of ancient energies, remnants of pagan beliefs and rituals that predated any Christian. Influence. These are lands where nature spirits, powerful, capricious, and often cruel, were the true rulers, and the forests were their temples. Here, according to tradition, dwell not only the creatures known to us but far older entities, often nameless and incomprehensible, that are part of nature itself, its breath, its primal force. It is said that there are sacred groves, hidden deep within the most impenetrable thickets, where no human foot has trod for hundreds of years. In these groves, where sunlight barely penetrates through the dense canopies, and the air is heavy with moisture and the smell of moss, stand ancient stones covered in lichen, which have witnessed sacrifices and prayers offered to long-forgotten deities of fertility, death, and the forest. These deities, often depicted as horned beasts, gigantic serpents, or women with bodies woven from branches, demanded respect and offerings, and their wrath was terrible for those who dared to disturb their peace or encroach upon their domains. Imagine, you are wandering through the forest and suddenly stumble upon a strange, abnormally silent clearing. birds do not sing. Animals avoid this place, and the air feels dense, almost palpable, filled with the hum of unseen energy. The trees here are older and taller than anywhere else, their branches intricately interwoven, forming a living canopy, and their roots, like snakes, emerge from the ground, forming natural altars. Here, legend says, one can feel the breath of an ancient god, its invisible presence permeating your very being, eliciting both reverence and primal terror. Some brave souls who dared to explore such places recounted strange, pulsing lights emerging from beneath the earth, voices whispering in ancient, incomprehensible languages directly into their minds, and visions of long-forgotten rituals unfolding before their inner eye. It is said that if a person tries to take anything from such a place, be it a stone, a branch, or even a pinch of earth, they will bring upon themselves and their lineage a terrible curse that will haunt them for generations, manifesting in inexplicable illnesses, misfortunes, and premature deaths. There are stories of entire families who disappeared without a trace after one of them desecrated such a sacred grove, or whose homes burned to the ground from inexplicable fires, leaving behind only ashes and a sense of ominous presence. These places are living reminders that the forest is not merely a collection of trees, but something far greater, something that breathes and feels, and that in its depths, forces still slumber, capable of both granting life and taking it, forces that await their hour to remind us of their existence. Once more, we have journeyed through the veil of time and space to touch upon the darkest corners of the Black Forest, where the boundaries between the real and the mystical blur, where every rustle could be the whisper of an ancient spirit, and every shadow could conceal something unspeakable. We have heard of witches' Sabbaths on hidden peaks, where the air is thick with magic and dread. We have felt the cold breath of werewolves and wild men roaming the impenetrable thickets. We have wandered through the ghostly halls of ruined castles, where the echo of tragedies continues to resonate. In an eternal dance of shadows, and we have felt the ominous presence of wandering lights and the night raven, hunting for innocent souls. But what if these stories are not merely ancient myths, but echoes of a truth too horrifying to be fully comprehended? What if the Black Forest is not just a forest, but a living organism whose memory holds millennia of pain, sorcery, and primeval fear? The next time you find yourself near a dense thicket, especially at dusk, pause for a moment, close your eyes, inhale the damp, woody air, listen to the whisper of the wind, the rustle of leaves, the distant, indistinct sound that could be anything. And ask yourself, do you hear the whispers of the Black Forest? Do you hear the echoes of Sabbaths, the roars of ancient beasts, the cries of restless souls, and the promise of veiled horrors? And what if this whisper is not just the wind, but something far more personal, addressed directly to you, urging you to look deeper, beyond the visible, and to understand that some secrets never truly die. They merely wait in the shadows to reveal themselves once more. For who knows, perhaps the most terrifying of all stories has yet to be told, and it is simply waiting in the deepest reaches of the Schwarzwald for its next listener.